Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here to talk about some Irish book releases in 2023 that I think sound really exciting and that I've added to my TBR. So I have 5 books here to talk about that are coming out in 2023 that I think just sound really good. The first book I want to talk about is Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. This is a book that is coming out in July. So this book, as far as I know, takes place in 1990 in London, and we are following a reporter who is looking into, I think, a suspicious death of a young child, and as he looks into this death and looks kind of at the surroundings of this child's death and the local area or the neighborhood, suspicions seem to fall on this like local Irish family that are in the area, and I don't know whether if somehow they might have a connection to this child's death. And then alongside that, we are meeting a girl called Carmel, who I'm not sure, but I would presume maybe is part of this family, and she is someone who had maybe a lot of potential but has ended up being stuck in where she is now. And because of the death of this child and because of the investigation that is ongoing, she starts looking into her own family and starts kind of uncovering family secrets. So that is all I know right now about this book, but I think it actually sounds pretty good. It kind of sounds a little bit like mysterious, also maybe sounds a little bit, I always love like characters who are kind of like, you know, maybe rediscovering themselves in different ways, and also kind of finding out about family secrets is also kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that when it comes out. Another book I'm really interested to reading is The Happy Couple by Naoise Dolan. This one is out in May. Naoise Dolan wrote Exciting Times, which I have up above me somewhere, which I read as soon as it came out and I quite enjoyed. And this one actually kind of focuses on a group of characters and kind of a friendship circle. So we are following 2 characters who are very much in love and they've just gotten engaged, and they are planning their perfect wedding for their perfect relationship. And as the wedding date gets closer, I think we are looking at these 2 as a couple, but then we're also looking at some of their friends. There is a focus on the groomsmen, there's a focus on the bridesmaid, and then I think there's another friend as well who is kind of involved in the group, this circle, and we're kind of just seeing how they all maybe act towards each other and how their lives intersect ahead of this wedding day. So I don't know if the wedding day happens or if things like come to a head before the wedding day. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to find out, but from what I've read of Naoise Dolan, Dolan's writing before, she's has interesting character studies, and I did like what she did with Exciting Time. I'm interested to see what she does with this book as well. And then there's another kind of more historical fiction type of book that is Nothing Special by Nicole. Flattery. This one is out in March, so this is out very soon, if not already by the time by the time this video comes out. So this one is actually set in New York in 1966, and we are following a young girl called May who is hired to be a typist for Andy Warhol, who is writing some sort of novel, and she is transcribing, I don't know whether it's interviews or notes or something like that, and this is I think it's maybe her first job. It's her first kind of like foray into being a grown-up, and she becomes friends with some of the other people in the office, some of her colleagues. She becomes really good friends with them and starts experiencing, I think it's in New York she's in, yeah. She kind of starts experiencing the New York life, like nightlife of the 60s, goes out, like drinking and partying and dancing and stuff like that. But she keeps coming back to the work and to the novel that she is transcribing for Andy Warhol, and I think she's becoming a little bit consumed with this. And this is what it is described on the blurb, which is May must grapple with a thin line between art and voyeurism and determine how she can remain her own person as the tide of the 60s sweeps over her. And that sounds pretty interesting to me. Another book I'm really interested in reading is The Woman on the Bridge by Sheila Flanagan. This one is also out quite soon. It's out in April. And I don't know if I've read Sheila Flanagan before. I've definitely had some of her books on my shelf at one point. But this one just obviously spoke to me because it is set in 1920s in Dublin, and anything at the moment that's set in Ireland in the 20s around the time of the Irish Civil War, I just think is really interesting. It's definitely like a buzz topic for me. I think I always like reading books set around this time. And we're following a character called Winnie O'Leary, who I think is fairly neutral when it comes to the Civil War, to the War of Independence and to the Civil War. She's like a little bit like so about it. I think she wants Irish freedom, but she's not like a big she's not super passionate about it. And then she ends up falling in love with She ends up meeting and falling in love with a rebel fighter called Joseph, who is obviously like really deep into the movement of fighting for Irish freedom. I think this is more like War of Independence than Civil War, but maybe, I don't know whether it combines the two, because they kind of followed one after the other, to be honest. So as she kind of gets closer to Joseph and their relationship becomes becomes stronger and more serious, she ends up kind of having to make a decision whether she wants to, really get involved in the movement for Irish freedom, or if she wants to take a step back and possibly let Joseph go. So she has to kind of make some decisions about herself, and about her own, maybe her own politics and her own priorities and what she wants to do. And the second last book I want to talk about is one of the ones that I'm very excited to read. There's something about this one that just like is ticking a lot of boxes for me for some reason, and that is Service by Sarah Gilmartin. And this one is about a waitress, a chef, and a chef's wife. 3 different stories. And I think it's kind of, from what it sounds like Me Too, the Me Too movement meets Boiling Point, which I think sounds really interesting. So we are following this woman who used to be a waitress in this restaurant, and I think there are some accusations that end up coming out against the chef. And we see the waitress she ends up thinking back, I think maybe a summer or a period of time in her life where she worked as a waitress in this restaurant, and she is thinking about how the tensions were like behind the scenes in the kitchen, and maybe the relationships she had, possibly with the chef, possibly with the chef's wife, I'm not sure. But it says, their 3 different voices reveal a story of power and abuse, victimhood and complicity. This is a novel about the facades that we maintain, the lies that we tell, and the courage it takes to face the truth. So yeah, this sounds really, really good to me, so I will definitely be reading this year. And the last book I want to talk about is The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This one I don't know too much about, but only has a very small blurb. This one is out in June, so it's also out pretty soon. And I do have a copy of this from NetGalley, so I'm going to hopefully be reading this around May time. So I have it ready to be reviewed for June. And this is, Rachel Murray is 21 years old, platonically infatuated with her housemate James, and less than platonically infatuated with her enigmatic married English professor Dr. Byrne. Over the course of a year, as Rachel and James's lives become more and more deeply entwined with those of Dr. Byrne and his perfect wife Deanie, tensions rise and a shocking secret threatens everything they hold dear. So yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. So yeah, I'm really interested in reading all of these, and they're all out kind of the earlier half of this year. So yeah, if you guys have any of these marked to be read, or if any of these take your fancy, please let me know. My one I think that I definitely want to read is Service. There's just something about that is just really calling my name, so I'm definitely going to be trying to read that as soon as it comes out. So yeah, which one would you read out of this pick? Which would be your first one to read if you had all of them in your grasp at the moment? Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time.